Hey there folks, Wrath here from Tabletop Minis, and welcome to this Age of Sigmar Grand Tournament Roundup. So I've been back, or I got back on Monday after a weekend being away down at Warhammer World. You might have seen our Road to the GT intro video. Me and my brother went down there. It was a 2-day tournament with 5 games, 3 on the Saturday and 2 on the Sunday. And it was just an amazing trip. So I'll start with a little bit of an overview, and then we'll talk through all the games that I had. I don't have any video footage. I've only got a few camera shots from my phone, but hopefully it'll be enough to kind of give you an idea of how the games went and the tournament went. And then afterwards, on the Monday we stayed an extra day so that I could take in the exhibition center, even though I didn't have too much time in there. So I've got quite a few pictures from the exhibition center at the end. But for people who've already gone, maybe they're not interested in seeing them again. So I'll just save that till the very last part of the video. So. The Grand Tournament, we had it planned for, or it's been planned for quite a while. I had a couple different ideas for armies to take, but I ended up settling with Stormcast Eternal's Warrior Brotherhood, and it's quite a strong list, quite a competitive list that's won some tournaments before, Blood and Glory, and it's quite regularly getting on the top tables in the tournaments as long as it's played reasonably well. So quite a strong list. Turned up on Friday night and then into Warhammer World on the Saturday morning. So the tournament was kicking off at 10 o'clock. So, everybody was in there around about 9 onwards, getting registered and so on. And, it was an absolutely buzzing place. There were so many people, and it was just absolutely awesome. So, and it was really surreal as well. This is like the first big event that I've been to, and you're looking around the tables and it's just amazing. There's like the Facehammer guys, there's Rob and Eddie. You've got all these Games Workshop guys that have been on the on the Warhammer TV before and so on. Ben Curry. There's just so many faces that you see from all the podcasts and videos. It was just really surreal. It was like, and then at the same time you're surrounded by Forge World and huge Games Workshop stores and Bugmans and all this kind of castle decorations around the wall. So it was just amazing, really, really cool. I was like a kid in a candy shop pretty much on day one, well, for the whole weekend really. But so coming in on day one, wasn't really sure how the tournament was going to go. We registered, we all got a number, and then they put our numbers up on the big projector screen, just to tell you who you're playing for the first game. So I've also got a couple of pictures here that I'll show just now before we get into the games, of the actual exhibition, of the sort of the venue. Lots of people around, and a couple of just throwing photos here. Here's me and Rob on Saturday night, a bit of a blurry photo because my phone was playing up, and and it was really dark, the place as well. That was really cool on Saturday night. So if I didn't say at the start, thanks to everybody who came and the Warhammer Live team for making it such an awesome weekend. It was really, really cool. And here's me in front of the Rhino, in front of my tank. Pretty cool. And here's a picture of me with Earl, one of the guys at the tournament. American guy working over in Brussels. So, and there was a big group of them that we had a lot of fun over the whole weekend. So thanks to you guys especially, that was excellent, and all the lifts you gave me back from the tournament on the Saturday and the Sunday. And then here's me next to the Stormcast Eternal up at the front. So just really, really cool. I was in proper fanboy mode the whole weekend because there was just so much cool stuff around and so many cool people, and it was just absolutely awesome. So let's get into game one then. Game one, I was playing against a nice fella. I might not be pronouncing his name correctly here, but Dawid Grzesic, and he had a Sylvaneth army. And this army was really beautifully painted, an amazingly painted Sylvaneth army, and he had put the effort in as well with his trees and everything to kind of look cohesive. It was quite a strong list. I've played similar lists here in Aberdeen. This one had a bit more Kurnoth Hunters, so it was basically a Lariel, a Tree Lord Ancient. He had 12 Kurnoth hunters, 9 of them with bows, 3 with greatswords, and a unit of 10 dryads. So it was I've played against lists like this with a bit less Kurnoth hunters, and I've had mixed results with the Warrior Brotherhood. So I was kind of thinking maybe this could kind of go either way. So this first scenario was Blood and Glory. So 4 objectives on the board, 1 in each corner, and you have to get all 4 objectives to get a major win. So it's a reasonably difficult scenario to win, but I think it's a good one for the Brotherhood, because Brotherhood can drop anywhere on the table out with 9. I wasn't sure how this game was going to go to start with, so I obviously deployed all my Warrior Brotherhood up in the Celestial Realm, and then when I've played against this list before, my opponent tends to put everything together and try and screen a Lariel really, really well, but David here, or David, maybe that's how you pronounce his name, apologies for that, he split his deployment. So he put in his right corner of the table, he put a Lariel there, and he surrounded a Lariel with 10 dryads, and then he screened in the woods with his Kurnoth hunters. So he had, I believe, 9 Kurnoth hunters he put in the woods in front. And then on the other side of his deployment, on the left side, he put down his Treeman Ancient with another 3 Kurnoth hunters, and I think that was Tree Revenants he had over there, and a Branch Witch. I can't remember exactly, I might be getting this slightly wrong, but that's basically what happened. And he had a Wildwood on both objectives on his side of the field, so I guess he felt like he was kind of covering his objectives really well. So turn 1, I basically came down, I took the turn. Sorry, no, I didn't take the turn. I think I gave the turn to him, and then I took the second half of turn 1, and I basically dropped mostly all of my Brotherhood on his Alariel side. And what I managed to do is, with the Azeros, I managed to snake the Protectors and the Retributors. What I did was I put them straight onto the Dryads, because my plan here was I was going to shoot off the Dryads that were screening Alariel and hopefully get enough mortal wounds on Alariel to kill her in one turn. And the plan went really well, so he was pretty shocked that I managed to do that, but he had kind of left gaps around the Wildwoods to be able to get the Protectors into, and the Retributors, and then, with the Azeros allowing them to move in. Excuse me. And my 6 Prosecutors with Javelins and 2 units of Judicators managed to take off all the Dryads, and then it was basically just pile into Lariel and killed her in turn 1, which he wasn't really too happy about, but I kind of felt like I needed to concentrate on one side, because he had split his force. The idea was to kind of divide and conquer. So if you get models if you get models on his Wildwood, he can't really use the Wildwood for teleporting across. So I felt like if I put everything in, put the hammer into his strongest side, which was the Lariel side with 9 Kurnoth hunters, then I would force his Treeman Ancient and Kurnoth hunters over the other side. They basically are out of the game for a few turns, and it gives me time to kind of rack up the damage on this side, hopefully make it irrecoverable for him, and then and then finally later on in the game, the plan was to, because I still had my Liberators in the Celestial Realm, plan was to drop the Liberators over on the objectives when I needed them. So it worked really well. Then into his turn, he basically 6 of the Kurnoth hunters he teleported through the Wildwood back to the other side where the Treeman Ancient was. So he had quite a force over on this objective. And I think this was turn 2. And then what I did was I brought my Prosecutors round past the middle of the table, kind of keeping them out of charge range of most of his army. And I managed to run them to, I think into turn 3, I managed to run them onto, well, actually what I did was I dropped some Liberators down next to this objective and the my right side table objective, and what he had done was he got priority on turn 3. He moved his Kurnoth hunters off this objective. These are the Kurnoth hunters that he had teleported over here. He moved them off this objective to get within range of shooting my adjudicators and so on. But at the same time, he had moved further than 6 inches. So turn 3, I had in my head, well, if I get the back half of turn 3 and priority on turn 4, I've got 2 turns that I can potentially seize all 4 objectives. So because he had already moved off the objective, I thought if I get my Liberators down there on the objective, I will have more bodies and I'll just win a major victory onwards. So in this scenario, from turn 3 onwards, you can win a major if you've got more than your opponent. More models in your opponent, and from turn 3 onwards, immediately a major victory at the end of your turn. So I didn't really get lucky here. I mean, I could have won the game straight away on start turn 4, but he won priority. So what he did was he moved his Kurnoth hunters back. They wiped out 4 of the Liberators, apart from the Liberator Prime that you see here on the right side of the screen, who in the back half of turn 4, what I did was I retreated him, because if I kept him in combat, he would have just died. I retreated him. I brought in the Prosecutors, and what I did was I got priority on turn 5. I brought in the Prosecutors, which allowed me to basically have 1 more model than him next to this objective. This was his left side objective. And at the same time, I had all my Warrior Brotherhood, my Paladins and so on the his right side objective, and I also had both of my objectives covered. One of the Zeros had my back left objective, and another 2 units of Liberators were on my back right, because he had his 3 Revenants there that I had to deal with. So it was really good. I could have won it at the start of turn 4. I ended up winning it in turn 5, just by 1 model on this objective. So a major victory there. A great start to the tournament. An amazing army to play against, this Sylvaneth. And I had a lot of fun with it. So then we went into the lunch break, and they put on the lunch there down at Warhammer World. That was really cool. And I went into game 2, which was, I believe, the fella's name was Matt Robertson. And his list was one that I faced a few times against my brother. His was slightly different though. He had 2 Frost Lords on Stonehorn, 2 Huskars on Thundertusk. He had an Icebrow Hunter and the Frost Sabers. He had 3 units of Frost Sabers. I think the Frost Sabers were his battle line. So the scenario here was Gift from the Heavens, which is quite a good one for the Warrior Brotherhood, because we've got the flexibility and just kind of dropping wherever we need to be. I knew from the get-go that I didn't really want to drop early, and because these Stonehorns and Frost Lords, they put out so much damage that, if I was down on turn 1 or 2, it's likely that I'd be kind of off the table by turn 3 or 4, and then he'd be free to rack up points on the objectives. So with Gift from the Heavens, you get a number of points depending on what turn you're in. So it's more important to have the objectives in turn 4 and 5 than at any other point in the game. So the way we played this, he kind of set up as a bit of a brick unit in the middle. He kept his Sabers off the board, and I think he brought them on in turn 4. Basically, turn 1, I didn't do anything in turn 1, and he just stayed where he was in the middle of the board because we didn't know where the meteors were. Turn 2, his meteor came down on his right side of the board, and so he moved his Icebrow Hunter over that side of the board, and then because I didn't have anything on the table at this time, he couldn't really do anything. So into my turn 2, my meteor came down on my right side of the table, so they were basically as far away as possible, which was really awesome for me, because if they'd have been on the same side of the table, his Thundertusk could have positioned themselves to just be able to shoot anything. So what I did was I dropped just a unit of Liberators in my turn 2, so I can start clocking up points. And I positioned them so that even if the Thunder Tusks moved, they were out of range of shooting from a Thunder Tusk, so they couldn't just get alphaed off the board. He'd have to, he'd have to he'd have to run his Stonehorn and then get lucky on a charge to be able to get to them, which he didn't actually commit to. So into turn 3, turn 3 was a bit of a non-event as well. I basically just stayed on my objective and clocking up points. The idea in my head at this point was I need turn 4 and 5 objectives on my side, and if I can grab his objective for at least one turn, then I'll be able to grab the game. So that's basically what we did. Into turn 4, I believe I got the priority, and I dropped everything. So what I did was I dropped my Zeros, and I basically conga lined in my Protectors and my Retributors around his Icebrow Hunter, and you can see the little orange marker there. That's the objective marker. So what I did, you need to have more models than your enemy within 6 inches, and or possibly no other enemy models. I'd have to check that. But anyway, the idea here was drop on turn 4, grab his objective for one turn, then even if he kills everything in turn 5, as long as I've got my objective, I should be fine. So that's what I did. I just dropped everything there. I kept them out with 3 inches of the Thunder Tusks and Stonehorns. I wasn't interested in getting into combat with them at all, because I just didn't want to drag any of them into combat. I just wanted to secure the objective and minimize my casualties. So that's what I did. I also put down some screens on my side of the board in case he decided to get lucky with his Stonehorns and run them over there and maybe get a high charge roll and be able to contest my objective. I placed down a couple of screens of Judicators and Prosecutors, which served me quite well. So at this point, we're in turn 4. I basically secured both objectives because in the combat phase, obviously the Retributors and Protectors, they just wiped out the Icebrow Hunter, and then the objective was mine. So I took my objective and his on turn 4, so I was way up on points. Well, 4 points up for turn 4. Into turn 5, well, what he basically did was just put everything into my Protectors and Retributors to try and claim his own objective back. He had kind of lost the game by this point because he couldn't really get over to my side of the board to contest that objective. So it ended up with another major victory for the Stormcast. So really fun game. Using these Zeros to get the units very close to enemy units is just so amazingly good. After playing with Zeros and Brotherhoods quite a few times, so like for quite a long time, being able to kind of just drop to even into base to base is so important for being able to grab games. So like game 1, it got me a Lariel to kill on turn 1, which was a big turning point. Here in game 2, turn 4, it grabbed me this objective. So you see how he positioned with his sabers here. He was kind of looking at the knights, keeping my Zeros more than 9 inches away from his back corner, but I don't think he realized that if I drop double a Zeros in the front, so you've got one Zeros 9 away, another one 5 away, and then 4 away, and then you can basically deploy 5 inches from there. I managed to come through all of his screens of sabers and still drop my units, very deep into his territory. So yeah, that was it. Another major victory. So this is game 2, day 1, 2 major victories. I was absolutely amazed that I was doing so well for the first day. But yeah, that was a great result. So then we went into game 3, and game 3. Apologies, I didn't catch my opponent's name. I think when I go to tournaments from now on, I'll write down my opponent's name, because I was meeting so many different people and so many different names that I couldn't really keep up with remembering them. I'm pretty bad with names anyway. So game 3, and we had take and hold here as our scenario. So in this scenario, you have to have more models than your enemy within. Is it more models than your enemy, or no enemy models within 6 inches of an objective to capture it? So the list I was playing, Stormcast Eternals, it was an interesting list, one that I've not seen before, where he was running 4 Knight Venators, which are like the shooty knights, and 3 units of Judicators, and then he had I believe it was 12 Prosecutors with Celestial Hammers, or 9 of them with hammers, 3 of them with javelins, and then 3 units of Liberators. So he had a very, very shooty list. I was a little bit concerned about the amount of firepower he had. Like, I didn't want to sit back in this game because he can basically shoot anything I put down off the board. He had more drops than me, so I put everything in the heavens as usual. And then he deployed in a kind of castle formation where he had the Liberators out front screening, then the Judicators sitting behind them, and then behind them the Prosecutors, and finally at the back middle he had his 4 Knight Venators. So turn 1, I actually chose to go. No, I did choose to go second here because I wanted to hope for a double turn. And he sat on his side of the board, on his objective, and basically denied him the ability to do anything because I don't have anything on the board. Then in my turn 1, I felt like if I dropped everything, I'd be able to really do a lot of damage to this list. So that's exactly what I did. I basically double his Zeros down into his front line. I put the Retributors over there on the left and the Protectors on the right. And the Protectors, with their 3-inch range, they were able to fight over the Liberators into the Judicators, which he didn't. I don't think he's seen that coming. I think he thought his Judicators were safe behind the Liberators, but he hadn't left enough of a gap. So turn 1, the hammer comes down basically. Behind this is Zeros in the middle. I had on my side of the board, I had my Judicators, and they shot off my opponent's Judicators. Combat phase, my Paladins basically destroyed the Liberators at the front and most of the Judicators. And yeah, so I basically took off a lot of his screen. And then I think he was kind of fighting a losing battle from there onwards because, I had all of this army down right in his face. He did have a Celestant Prime up in the heavens, though, as well. So that's something that I had in mind, that, that might come down and spoil my day over on my side of the board. So my Prosecutors, they also came down in turn 2, I believe. Up at the front here just to get more shooting on because I was trying to clear off these Prosecutors and Knight Venators. I managed to get one of Zeros right into the middle of his screen. So with the Zeros at the start of a turn, they can use their lamp to do. It does a D3 mortal wounds to every unit within 8 inches. And in this game, in this scenario, I managed to get him placed in, and my opponent wasn't able to kill him. Placed in a way where when that lamp went off in the next turn, it did massive damage. It did like loads of damage to the Venators. They all start, I think, on 5 or 6 wounds. A lot of them were on 2 or 3 wounds afterwards, and it just helped me kind of clear off a lot of the units that had been diminished, but there wasn't much left of them. So that's kind of how the game went. He then came down, I think it was turn 3 or possibly turn 4, when he brought his Prime down on my side of the board, 9 inches away, and he run his Romanian Venators away from his objective. I think his idea was that he would use them to just continue shooting as they can. If they had stayed in combat, they would have definitely died. So that's what happened. And then finally, the Celestant Prime failed his charge. He rolled a 2 and a 1, which is pretty much the only result, because the Celestant Prime can change the dice. So rolling a 2 and a 1, he could have changed the 1 to a 6, but still 8. So he failed his charge. So I ended up grabbing a major victory in game 3 here. I think it was turn 3 or 4, which was really nice. I really enjoyed playing this list. It's one that I've not played before. I think my opponent got a little bit unlucky, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. So that was pretty much day 1 gaming. So 3 major victories. At this point, I was thinking I couldn't believe my luck or being able to on day 1 pick up maximum points. I thought was amazing. So that was really cool. Then Saturday night, big shout out to all the guys who we were out with, Luke McHugh, and there's too many names to start listing, but and Rob and all the other guys, Games Workshop guys as well, met in town, and just a night of drinking. They all went off, or most people went off fairly early, kind of around about 1ish, but we stayed out till 3, and probably drank a bit too much for being on a tournament weekend. That's one thing I wouldn't do next time we go to a tournament, is drink so much in between the tournament, because Sunday I really paid for it. So into game 4, and game 4, so I came in on the Sunday morning really hungover, a little bit tired, and I seen that I was on table 1 and on the TV, which was absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe that, after winning my first 3 major wins, I was right up there at the top on table 1 on Warhammer Live, which was just absolutely amazing. I was like gobsmacked. So this game was against my opponent. His name was Rick Myhill, and Rick was playing a Chaos list. If you've seen the Warhammer Live coverage, you would have already known how this game went and what was involved. He basically had a Vermin Lord Deceiver, he had Death Master Snitch, Arch Warlock, and he had Be'lakor, some Marauders, and 6 Storm Fiends and Sail. So the scenario here was 3 places of power, which I was really hoping not to hit this scenario on the weekend, because we're playing 5 games out of 6. At the start of every game, they basically roll dice and they just pick a scenario, or they roll dice and then they take a scenario that hasn't been used out of the 6 in the General's Handbook. So there's a possibility that one of the scenarios isn't going to be played over the weekend. So I was hoping that was going to be 3 places of power, because with the double Knight Zeros, it's really not a good one for me. So onto table 1, 3 places of power. My opponent had 5 heroes. I've only got 2 Knight Zeros. I'm really, really hungover. It was really quite a surreal experience. I was super excited though, just to even get on the stream though. So that was really, really cool. The way the game went, I would say, I basically, to cut a long story short, it was a major loss for me. It's not really a surprising result given the lists and the scenario. But I think that during the game I did have a couple of points where if things had gone differently, I could have won the game. I wouldn't have said it was an impossible game to win. But yeah, I was very defensive. I was holding back my heroes, because I know from experience that if I put the Zeros down early, my opponent will just focus on them, kill them, and then the game becomes unwinnable. So I really didn't want to drop my Zeros. But at the same time I have to get points at some point. So the idea was really to try and pick off his heroes early and then get my heroes on the board later on in the game, and also to stay out of range of them Storm Fiends. So he had Sail and Storm Fiends, and he's got the ability to fly them 18 inches and then they shoot 8 inches, so that's 26-inch range. So in turn 1 I dropped my shooting. I gave him the priority first, so I was hoping here to be able to get a double round of shooting. So he dropped his Arch Warlock in the middle, and he scored a point in he scored a point in turn 1. Then I dropped my shooting. I put everything into the Arch Warlock, and I think I was quite unlucky to not have killed the Arch Warlock, and I think that was quite a big tipping point in the game, because he had Deathmaster Snitch hidden in the Arch Warlock. So I managed to get the Arch Warlock down to 1 wound, and that kind of that didn't go so well for me at all. So the game basically just played out like my shooting went down. He sent all his heroes forward. Be'lakor on the left. On the right, he had the Vermin Lord Deceiver. See, this is another thing as well. I kind of my kind of afterthoughts of the tournament is, when sometimes you will come up against lists. You'll come up against lists where you that you haven't played before, and you're not familiar with the War Scrolls. And game 1 to 3, I really felt like I knew what my opponent could do, and so I always had in my mind, the threats and how I plan to, like, how I'm going to deal with them. Against this list, I really wasn't sure on the Vermin Lord Deceiver or Snitch or there's a couple of things there, or Be'lakor, and these special abilities like Be'lakor can pick a unit, and that unit it can only move, charge, do any combat and so on a 4+. He had put that on my Retributors that I didn't know at the time, but I kind of assumed that had happened. Being able to hide Snitch in the Arch Warlock, I wasn't actually aware of that. So I think, bad matchup for me. My knowledge on his list wasn't too good. I can't remember. I think I might have asked him to see his list just at the start to just have a look at it. I'm not sure if he was able to provide it to me. I certainly know in my last game, my opponent didn't have a list he could show me, which I felt was a bit kind of quite bad, because they say in the pack that you bring 2 copies of your lists and hand one in at registration. So I kind of turned up at the tournament with everything, like 2 copies of the list, had the FAQ printed out, I had the everything printed out, and then in kind of game 5, well, definitely game 5, I'm not sure if in game 4 as well, not being able to see your opponent's list is kind of a bad thing. I guess I could have called him out on it if I wanted, but I didn't feel like it was that important. At this point in the tournament, I was very happy to have won my first 3 games on Saturday. Amazingly happy to be on table 1 on the start of Sunday. I had a cracking hangover, and as well, at the start of this game, one of the tournament organizers came over and he said, "Oh, by the way, your army's been nominated for best army." So I think it was 6 or 9 armies out of the 90 were nominated for best army, and on the Sunday, they were put in the cabinets for people to vote on, and mine was actually one of them, which I felt was an absolute shock. So here I am, Sunday morning, massive hangover, on table 1 on TV, just got best army nominee. To be honest, I was kind of bad matchup and stuff, but I really didn't care too much. I was just having fun. So that game didn't go so well. A couple of tipping points. The Arch Warlock not dying at the start. I think if Snitch, because Snitch would have died then as well as part of it, because it's hidden within our Arch Warlock unit. Also, what other points went against me? My Retributors, when they got into combat with Snitch in turn 3, when I dropped everything, because I had to drop in turn 3, otherwise I had no chance. What I did was I dropped the Protectors onto Be'lakor, the Retributors onto Snitch, and the idea was I'd take them off in that turn, and then hopefully be able to kill the Vermin Lord, with the Retributors after killing Snitch, and then hopefully getting turn 4 and 5 with my Zeros on both objectives. See, the thing is, if I'd put my Zeros down early or even mid-game, they would have died, because he would have flew the Storm Fiends over and shot them off the board easily. Or he would have skitter leaped the Vermin Lord, charged with the Vermin Lord, and killed them easily. So, you can say, well, why didn't you put your shooting down in front of the kind of screen and just shoot off sail, and then the Storm Fiends can't move? but you've still got a skitter leaping vermin lord that will literally one-shot an Azeros. And there was just too many threats on the table. Like, the idea was to hopefully shoot off his heroes, his little heroes, and then hold out till turn kind of 3, 4, or 5, and then drop the Zeros and pick up points. So another thing that I wasn't aware of is this, in this scenario, and I'm sure for a lot of people they probably make this mistake as well, but it was pointed out during the game to me that the way that this scenario works is if you've moved on to an objective, you can then go and move off the objective and still score points for it. So like he had a vermin lord on his left objective that moved off, and you know the way that it's worded in the scenario is that a player controls an objective at the end of any move if they have a hero within 3 inches of the objective. So if you finish within 3 inches in the move phase, that hero then controls it. And if more than one is eligible, then the first to arrive controls it. And if a hero slays an enemy hero controlling a place of power, then they immediately gain control of it if they're within 3 inches. So, you know, when I dropped my double Azeros, one of them onto the left objective, I thought I was actually picking that up for the turn, because that same turn I was killing Bellicor with my protectors. But in actual fact, the only way that you can grab it on the turn is if your hero directly slays the opponent's hero. Otherwise, it's at the start of the movement, at the end of the movement, that he picks up the objective. So, a few things that I learned in that game, and you know, first time coming up against Snitch and so on, Snitch and Co. It was a really good game. I love being on the Warhammer TV stuff, and you know, I watched that back when I came home, and it was just really cool to see the armies down. And you know, when you watch games back, especially games that are quite important, you can always spot things that you could have done differently, that you may have got an extra, you know, you might have been able to do things in a different way to get a different result. But you know, there's points in this game that I felt that if things go right, I would have won the game. So yeah, amazing game. But I ended up coming out with a major loss, which was a bit of a shame, being my 4th game. But you know, if I'd won this game, I would have been on table 1 for the final game on TV for 2 games in a row, which would have been super cool. But it wasn't to be. So anyway, congratulations to Rick for the game. It was a good game. He was a good sport and everything. So that was really good. Then we went into game 5, and game 5, I believe the fellow's name was Tony Kirby. His list, I was playing Death here, and the scenario we were playing is escalation. So the one that we didn't get was Border War, which I was a little bit miffed about, because I love Border Wars, my favorite scenario, and I find the Warrior Brotherhood usually does really well in this. So I just want to, I've got his list over here. I'm just going to tell you what it is. It was basically a massed block of skeletons getting supported, and let's see where it is. Yeah, so what he had was 5 Graveguard, a white king with black axe, 5 black knights, and 110 skellies. And then he had Heinrich Kemmler, a necromancer, white king with infernal standard, and 10 direwolves and a mortis engine. So a massive amount of skellies on the board. But again, in this game, I would say that lack of knowledge of the war scrolls lost me the game, because I ended up with a major loss in my 5th game here. Which I feel like was a game that I should have been able to. I should have won this game, I think, based on the matchup. But I just didn't do things in the right way. You know, if I'd known the War Scrolls better and how his combos work, I would have deployed completely differently. So the way that it worked is basically he set up. Let me just get. Yeah, so he set up in like a big line, kind of, you know, the battle line have to be 9 inches away from enemy territory or from the middle, and the 3 objectives diagonally. He had like, on his left side, he had 30 skellies, then he had 40 skellies in the middle and 40 skellies on the right side, or the other way around. He had 40, 40, and then 30 on the right side. And then behind that, he had all of his heroes. So, so many models. Kind of going into the game, he was like, can you, we're probably going to be stuck for time on this game because I've got so many models to push around. So can we try and move it along? So I was like, okay, yeah, fair enough. I'll try my best. And then at the start of the game, when I was coming into deployment, he was kind of questioning my ability to move within 3 inches on the Zeros, which it's fairly well known now that a Zeros can put units, because they set up. They don't move within 3. They just set up within 3. It's quite well known that can be done, but he wasn't sure about it, so he wanted to speak to tournament organizer. So we got the tournament organizer over, and we ended up spending about 10 minutes waiting for a decision for that you can actually do that. So going from kind of let's hurry this up to pulling TOs over and taking some time. I didn't really mind it. I mean, if you're not sure about something, you probably should get the tournament organizer to come over. But in the kind of to keep the game flow, usually I don't kind of pick up on everything, but maybe that's a bad thing for tournaments, especially when you're playing at the kind of the higher tables, because small things can be quite important. So my deployment, I basically I thought, right, I'm going to drop on the objectives, I'm going to hold the objectives, I'm going to just screen off his skellies, and I'm going to stop him from being able to get bodies near the objectives, because these skellies, there's so many of them, and they're on small bases, and they can regenerate. I knew that if he gets one of them units onto an objective, it's going to be very, very difficult to remove it, and he's just going to sit there as like a tar pit, just taking points on the objective. So I basically surrounded him. I put my shooting down on the bottom left side of my board. I put one of Zeros in the middle and one up at the top, and then I put all of my Retributors and 2 units of Liberators, I think, over on the right side, and they were more than 3 inches away. So the idea here was I wasn't even going to go into combat with them. I was just going to hold them up. So to completely minimize damage I take, I just didn't even charge with them in this turn. And on the left side, the Protectors over there, and all the shooting at the back, so they could still. I wanted to shoot off his dogs in turn 1 because they might be able to come over and contest my back left objective, which is probably not the best thing to do actually, because the dogs are really easy to kill and they don't do much damage, and I could have probably took them off in later turns or even with some Liberators. But yeah, I really messed up my deployment here. I deployed into there's 2 mystical pieces of terrain at the back as well. My Protectors they're within 3 inches of the mystical, but so are a couple of units of his skellies. So I thought, well, if his skellies get befuddled for a turn or two, that could be that could really make the difference between whether he can kind of push forward or not. So I felt like at the start of this game when I set up, I thought I'm going to do really well here, but I wasn't familiar with the combos or his war skulls, and I had no idea that skeletons in huge units, massively buffed, can do so much damage. And honestly, it was just like the hammer coming down when them skeletons charged my Protectors and my Retributors. So he got lucky on all of his mystical checks throughout the whole game. Every turn they were rerolling wounds. Skellies, they get +2 attacks for if they're 30 models or more, and then they get extra attacks, I think, from the White King as standard or something. They get an extra attack, and then they are like rerolling to wound because of mystical. They're +1 to hit, I believe, and then he was casting with his Necromancer Dance Macabre, which allows him to pile in an attack twice. And it was basically I basically just got completely overrun. I took all 3 objectives in turn 1. In his turn 1, his skellies came forward and they did so much damage. They basically wiped out the Retributors and the Liberator front line on the right side. So in turn 1, he managed to I believe he seized. Was it turn 1? No, maybe not turn 1. Maybe turn 1 he didn't seize anything, but into turn 2, I think I got priority in turn 2. My protectors got befuddled, so they couldn't do anything. And then I basically dropped the rest of my force, hoping to hold these objectives. And I only managed to get more bodies on my bottom left corner. So I believe I finished this game with only 4 victory points, or either 4 or 5. But anyway, what basically happened is that unit of 40 skellies in the middle came forward. They wiped out the retributors with the help of the Graveguard, and any retributors left, they ran off in the battle shock, and then they continued forward onto the objective in the middle. And once they were there, I just couldn't get enough bodies around the objective to be able to contest it. It's a fairly good list, I would say. What he's got there, it works quite well. If I played it again, I would have played completely differently. I think what I would have done is I would have tried to remove the big unit of skellies by putting everything into it, maybe shooting and charging it, and just taking off maybe 20 models in the first turn or more, and then battle shocking it, another 10 or something, and then and maybe picking off his heroes with my shooting would have been a good thing to do as well. And just kind of not allowing him to be able to use all of them units to attack me in close combat, and just wreck me with the number of attacks that he had, and being able to reroll to wound and stuff. So yeah, the game didn't go too well. It was the last game of the whole weekend. I was quite tired by this point, and we played the whole 2.5 hours, and even then he wanted to continue even after we were a couple of minutes over time, just because he wanted the kill points. But I was kind of tired and the game was over, and I'd already lost the game. He had already got a major victory, so we just called it there. So it was a good game. Another game where I learnt a lot from. I think in both of them games on the Sunday, it was lack of knowledge and the matchup. Well, more so lack of knowledge on game 5, more so the matchup on game 4. Although I think I could have won both games if luck had been good and I'd played better. So that was all 5 of my games. Just a big thank you to all my opponents for making it really, really an enjoyable experience. I'm definitely got the tournament bug here. I think after you attend 1 or 2 tournaments, you kind of and you're really enjoying it, you kind of want to just continue to do more. So I did finish 18th out of 90, which means I've qualified, so top 40 qualify. And highlights were definitely getting best army and getting on the Warhammer TV and meeting everybody, like all the Warhammer TV Live guys, a lot of the podcast guys. Met Ross Veal from Facehammer, that was cool. Les Martin and all the other boys. And yeah, it was just an awesome time. So that's kind of my wrap up. I'm going to show you some exhibition photos. This is from the Monday. I bought a lot of goodies while I was there as well. A couple of t-shirts and a couple of models. I bought Sail just in case I want to make a Chaos Army with him. I'm doing Tzeentch, but I can't run him in a pure Tzeentch faction, so I'm not sure how much use I'm going to get out of him. But I thought while I'm down there, I might as well get the Forge World models that I might want to use. I also got an Errant Questor, which is the Warhammer World exclusive Stormcast, and I got the fluff book for Tzeentch. So I've got the Battle Tome and the I can't remember the name of it, but it's the fluff one about the Tzeentch army. So that's pretty cool. And I also got some prints. So like you can buy 40k Horus Heresy, Age of Sigmar prints down there in the store. So I've got some kind of Stormcast ones in nice cardboard frames. So loads of goodies. And then into the exhibition center. So Monday morning, they had on display, the new Eldar stuff that's just come out, the models that were leaked. and the sculpts are just amazing for them. And they also had the kind of the Zenitron display, so Zangoras and the Enlightened and Skyfarers and Kyric Acolytes all painted up to a really high standard, like heavy metal painted and army painted in the cabinets. So some massive eye candy on Monday morning, which was awesome. And here's some pictures of the Arcanites and so on. Apologies for my photos being a bit blurry, but I was using my phone camera here. So and then into the exhibition. I didn't have that much time in the exhibition because I had an 8-hour drive ahead of me, so I didn't spend as long as I would have liked to, but it was just amazing. There's so much history in the models and armies that they've got on display, and they're all painted to such a high standard. It just blew me away. So here we've got some Empire and stuff on green bases, a Star Drake. So they've got, I think, every army on display there, and all painted like heavy metal painted. So it was just, you could go around and just look at this, sit there just in a daze looking at things for so long. I've got a Star Drake at home that I haven't built and painted yet, so getting some inspiration from that. And then they've got these huge dioramas which are just mind-boggling. They're absolutely huge, so many miniatures involved, and they just look really, really epic. I'm not going to show you all the photos here because I took too many, so I'm just going to run you through some of the ones that came out quite well. This is a Silver Tower diorama we've got here. This is probably my favorite diorama, or one of my favorite. Or not this one, it's the next one. This is just some orcs here. Yeah, it was Sylvaneth with Alariel and a bunch of Kurnoth hunters running down a hill. And there's one Kurnoth hunter down there at the bottom holding a brute up in the air by his throat, and it just looks so cool, like really immersive. And just some photos here of Iron Jaws. My favorite model from the whole gallery, I think, is Archaon. And I'm not an overly huge fan of Chaos or anything, but the way that this model was painted was just amazing. It was just like the blending and the time that had gone into the sword and the wings and everything. You could really see that the level of the painting on this was just, it was another world. So yeah, that was really, really cool. Another diorama here, and then we have just flick through them here. More huge dioramas of all sorts. Here we have a dwarf on a bridge, a dragon slayer flying through the air. Pretty cinematic, I guess. And then quite a lot of 40k stuff. I also play 40k and I'm interested in the 40k universe, so they've got a lot of exhibitions and a lot of miniatures for all of their game systems, and all of them painted to an amazing level. Like, I don't think photos do these miniatures justice, because when you're there in person and you can actually see how crisp the definition and the highlights and the contrast is, it's something else. Especially if you don't have a huge amount of people around that paint at a very high level. Being able to see some of this stuff is really inspirational for your own painting. Here we've got Burning a Prospero, and that was really cool. You've got Lehman Russ on the bridge, and I think he's running in. Oh, what's he doing there? Yeah, I can't quite make it out from the phone. The Imperial Guard diorama here, I thought that was really epic. It looked like some sort of Soviet Union parade, demonstrating their power. Tons of Lehman Russ, like hundreds and hundreds of soldiers. It looks very almost what's that old game? You remember Red Alert, the combat game? It kind of reminded me of that in a sense. Just really cool. And then they've got the final exhibition. I think it was Exhibition 4, is an absolutely huge exhibition with let me see. I've skipped some slides here. So here's a nice Titan kind of diorama, and then we've got a nice Eldar one. Then they had the painted Warlord Titan on display. This thing is amazing, absolutely amazing. Now, one thing I would say about the Titans is if they're just painted flat colors, I don't think they look very good. Even the ones that I seen here at the dioramas, I don't think they look very good because it's just too large an area to not have any to not have detail, like a lot of detail work to kind of break up the large areas. So they almost look like kind of toys in a way in my mind, especially like this bigger Eldar one. But with the Warlord Titan that they had painted, you know, every part of this miniature had a lot of time had gone into it. You could tell, like these shoulder pads, when you look at them up close, the amount of weathering that have gone into them. I think that's actually this crackle paint that they've got there to kind of simulate like kind of rust and breaking up of the paint. But just absolutely amazing. Such a huge model as well. And then finally there's Eddie's Tyranids, which very, very reggae, colourful display. So yeah, I've got tons more pictures from the exhibition, but I'm not going to go through them all. I don't think there's that much value in it. But that's kind of a wrap up of the weekend. So thanks to everybody who attended and all of the staff that were supporting the event. We had loads and loads of fun, and definitely would go back to another one. I'm actually qualified for the final now in October, but I would like to go to Heat 2 or 3 as well, but I don't know, that would kind of maybe stop other people who want to qualify from getting a ticket, so I'm not sure whether I'd do that. But yeah, all in all, an amazing weekend, and yeah, definitely got the tournament bug. So that's my wrap up. So thanks for listening and watching, guys, and if you liked it, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.